Hello and welcome to Extra Condensed. My name is Toby Martin, CEO of Extensis. Extensis is a software company that helps creative designers control their chaos so they can be more productive. Today we're joined by Christian Büning, dialing in from Germany. Christian is the owner of Werkstoff Verlag, a creative agency. Christian, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, Toby. Thank you very much. My name is Christian Büning from good old Germany. I'm a freelance designer with my own office for more than 15 years now. And I publish some posters and books by myself just for fun. It's just my pleasure to publish them. And I'm always happy when someone buys it and does not always burn it directly. The last one I published was a book for an exercise for eyes, circuit training, and that was one of the reasons I'm here now, I think.
Excellent. Well, Christian, maybe you could tell us how you came up with the idea of circuit training for the eyes, because when we first learned of this, it was a fascinating concept, very near and dear to a lot of the things that we do at Extensis. So maybe give us a little bit of a background how you came up with this notion of circuit training for the eyes.
Very funny. It was a story when I was in school back, it's a few weeks ago from today. We were carrying a piece of wood and they're always saying it's a square. And I said, no, it's not a square. It's nearly to a square, but it's not a square directly. It's a rectangle. And we discussed and finally someone started to measure it. And they found out it was 2 meters to 1 meter 98. It was 2 centimeters. And it was not a square. And I just wondered by myself that the others didn't see it. It was for me so totally clear that it's not a square. And so it's that was the beginning, and then it all fell asleep for a few years. And finally, I remember the idea to train this ability to find figures, to find rectangles, to find triangles, to find circles, and kind of this. And that's how it started.
Well, that's fascinating. I certainly would have been one of the people at 2 meters, not 1.98. My eyes probably aren't as discerning as yours. So maybe tell us a little bit about kind of where you've come in and realized the difference in how people learn, the different neurological patterns, because again, where you would be aware of something like that, most people probably wouldn't. So let's talk a little bit about the difference in how people learn.
I think if you're learning something, it must have a relation to you and to your life, and otherwise it's just information. You will learn it and you will forget it 2 minutes later. If you have a story with it as a link to you, to your life, then you will never forget. And that's the simple story. If you try to make something learnable for people, you have to create this story. You have to create this link to the person's life. Then you have a chance that they remember this later. And that's the very tiny secret.
So Christian, that's a great point about each individual needs to learn in the patterns that's going to most allow them to adapt to the information. Do you have any stories about things that you've had to do or changes you've had to make specifically for people who had different learning patterns?
Yes, I do. Once I worked for people who need another access for information, maybe like a bigger size font, shorter sentences, easy language, kind of this. And for a company, I created a completely book with a running text in 22-point size. That's for a normal reading guy too much. You're unable to read it fluent. But there were some persons who came in, who opened the book and they said, no, I can't read it. It's too small. And that's the range where you have to enable access for information. And some people need a completely different access, and some people have a very wide range to access information. And that's the task.
Well, Christian, I appreciate that approach toward tailoring the learning for people with various different neurological challenges. As someone with a little bit of red-green color blindness, I find sometimes that things are a little bit harder to discern. So looking out that way, I think that's the interesting part where we can pivot and talk a little bit about your book. Now, congratulations again on your book. And you've taken the sort of approach of the training and various different exercises. Tell us a little bit more about some of the things that are in your book. And if you'd like, we can even try a couple exercises here.
Oh, yes, of course. I try to create different chapters in the book. maybe for color, for shape, for line, for typography. And it's very funny to see how people react on this. Some people are easy with colors, but different with typography. Some people are completely different. They are easy with typography, but very hard with colors. That's me. And it's for me hard to find colors, to refine colors. And if we are looking at typography, there are some areas in our brain, the same areas that are working when we're looking at faces. And this is very interesting because we try to read the shape of the letters, and we have associations with it. We have it looks warm, it looks peaky, it looks rough, it looks nice, it looks comfortable to us, and all this does our brain by itself, and we are able to train it. And the same will happen when someone looks at colors or shapes. For example, if you look at a triangle, it always looks spiky. And if you look at a square, it always looks soft, and you can't hurt yourself with a square. And this is universal, I think. And the details, they will make the fun to find out which kind of triangle, which kind of shape, which kind of letter. And this is kind of chaos to sort in your head, and some kind of exercise to train your eyes and the way you see.
Christian, that's exactly the type of creative chaos that Extensis has spent 20 years trying to manage around. Something as finite as a font, right? Subtle changes, small changes in those fonts can have a tremendous difference, including not just the visual patterns, but brand recognition and things along those lines. So I've got a copy of your book here, and if you want to take me through one of those exercises, we could give it a shot if you're interested.
I would love to. It's a special pleasure to me because you're so close to fonts, and it's very nice to see how close you are to fonts. And it's a level of special level because it's German.
Yeah. Indeed. Well, what page should we start with?
I thought about page 65.
All right, I've got it.
Okay. There are some words. They are all written with different kind of types. Always one letter is from another type, from another font. And one word is completely written in one font. And it's your turn to find out which one.
Which word is in a single font? I would say maybe the word pincel.
Yes, you're right.
Perfect. Right. Thank goodness.
Yes, eagle eyes.
Well, as I've said, we spend a lot of time looking at fonts, but that's not usually one of my strengths. So, well, that's fortunate I got lucky. Usually I'm not the most eagle-eyed with picking fonts. So this book has been fascinating to look at when you look at some of the colors and some of the lines and things like that. So I certainly would encourage everybody to take a look at this book. It's in German, but the exercises themselves I still find are fascinating. So did you come up with all of these yourself?
Yes, I collected them over a few weeks. Every day I made one or two, and then some were killed, some new came in the collection, and it was one day that was the point. It was okay. It was enough. It was not too much. It was difficult enough. There are two layers of difficulty. How do you say? One easy and one difficult, and one for the nerds. And it's in German, of course, but it works without any language. You can see the shapes, you can see the colors. It's universal.
Indeed, it's certainly an excellent book. I spent obviously quite a while flipping through and looking at the colors and the patterns and the lines and everything like that, and thought, well, it should be easy to see, but it's actually not. So it's definitely into the deep end of the neurological awareness. So I enjoyed it myself, and certainly I'm sure everyone else who takes a look will as well.
Thank you very much.
Now, switching a little bit to your teaching. You teach quite a bit, and some things that you've learned in teaching, there's some differences sort of between the way that I guess people my age would have learned design versus what's today. What are some of those changes that you see kind of in the student body or in the workforce from when people like you and I began versus today?
I think there's a very big difference. When I started to study design, the computers were completely new. It was not allowed to touch the computer. There was one nerd who was able to work with it, and you have to ask if you print out a sheet of paper, and it was magic. You have to step beside the line, and then you press the button print, and then paper came out. For today, everything is available. Everybody has access to tools to create, to produce some things. And I think it's a completely different way. And I think the time when we started to learn to create, to work with computers, it's a singular time, because the technique was so easy. When you look from today, it was easy for one person to work all the levels. Today, all the details have become so difficult, so complex, so outreaching, that it's usually not possible for one person to cover all this work. And it's completely different, but it's very easy. You have access to all the tools. That's democratic.
That's excellent. I could see certainly where it's a little bit of a good and a bad, right? Where it has become more democratic and more people can enter into that world, but it's also more difficult for people to perfect their craft, as it were. And you said something in the past about how typography has become almost public sport. I thought that was a great quote. Maybe you could explain a little bit more about how you see that, because that's something we certainly see. I know a lot of type foundries see that, but from the academia side, that's a fascinating point.
Yes, when I was very young in school, there was an orientation course, what will we do with our future, which job is the perfect for us. And there was a video, what designers will do, and they were all staring at a letter. It was a C, and they stare at this the swoosh. And I wondered, this could be a job, this could be a profession. I wasn't sure. It was completely out of space. It was something that was not in the everyday life of people. They all were reading, there were everywhere letters, but the designing of letters, the shape, the making of typography, the lettering, it was nearly unknown. And this changed completely in the last 20 years. Today, you can buy decoration letters everywhere to decorate your home. And it's a good decoration. They all love it. You have a B, a C, a T standing in the bookshelf just for decoration. And they all love the shape of the letter. And that's completely different. There are museums for old signs to keep the old designs. And that's completely different. Today, everybody has an access to and a relation to typography. And it's very easy to get this relationship. This is completely different compared to 20 years ago from now, my opinion.
No, that's interesting. And unless people like you and I know everywhere we go, we see typography. Most people don't. They see billboards and letters and things like that. So I think the awareness of how typography and just the shape of letters and everywhere you see them interacts with us on a daily basis, I think most people are passively aware. And I'm hopeful that people such as yourself talking about these patterns can help people become actively aware and not just observe, but also just to enjoy it, because it is an art form in and of itself. Wouldn't you agree?
Yes, I think so. Even if the most people don't have words for this, what's happening there when they look at typography or at letters, they can feel if it's right or not. And they can feel if, for example, if you have letters like Coca-Cola or letters like Nike or letters like Apple, everybody will immediately recognize this, and it's universal. You will recognize without knowing the words, without knowing this is sans serif or kind of this. No? You don't need it. You just see it and you have the correct, how do you say? You have the correct link in your head. And that's universal. And I think this is more aware than 20 years from now.
Nike and Coca-Cola are two great examples. And they lead to a point that I want to bring up, which is talking about monetizing things. So Nike, Coca-Cola, anyone, Facebook, they've learned how to monetize their brand. That's something that you've talked about in the past, about helping teach the new creative talents how to sort of monetize their intellectual property, because creative design is their intellectual property. So take a minute and explain to us sort of how you feel about that and how you've kind of passed advice on about monetizing the talent and the work that those creatives have produced?
Yes, that's a very, very good point. When I started my own design business, it was not usual to get taught at the university how to start a business. We've been taught in design and letters and colors and whatever, photography, but we have not been taught in business. And I started my business as from scratch. And I wondered how to get an amount for my work. The other way was very easy. What I have to pay was given. And then I started to calculate, what do I need? What kind of risk do I have? What kind of risk do I have to cover when I'm old, or when I'm ill, or when I want to make a holiday, kind of this. And then I started to calculate, and then I found out that it's not that difficult to make a calculation. And I wondered why so many colleagues are not doing this. And I was a little bit kind of upset. So I asked a professor of mine, why are there so many designers not calculating? And she looked at me and said, I don't know, ask them by yourself. Make a show, make a keynote. And then I swallowed and then started to make a keynote. I was very insecure, and the house was full. Many designers, every age, every discipline, and they were listening. It was completely silent, and I was very insecure if I'm completely wrong, if they will kill me when I stop, or if I'm on the right way. I had no idea. It was 1 hour, and I was sweating. Then I ended my keynote, and some designers, they have the age I am now, I think, came to me and said, thank you very much. I wouldn't have known this 20 years before to run my business. And that was that was an enlightening moment to me, because I realized there are so many designers, they have the same problems like me, and they want a solution for this. And so I started to repeat this keynote and worked on the keynote, and finally it was a book to get started as a designer. And finally it was the book that I appreciated to have when I started my business. And I hear from many designers that they are happy with this book to start the business, and it filled the gap.
That's excellent. I think every designer can learn something from you, whether it's the patterns, selections of fonts and colors and things like that, but also more importantly, how to monetize their art, because it is art, but that is intellectual property. And that's something that we've had conversations many times around, much the same as yourself. So I think that all of those messages combined are something that every designer can learn from and hear some point. So as we're rounding out to the end, Christian, I've got a couple last questions for you. One is, what would you do if you were given an extra 60 minutes a day?
Oh, I think I should say I would do sports, but I would sleep, I think.
That's excellent. We've seen everything from I would spend time organizing my office, which is a good one, and I could probably follow through to that one, to I would spend more time volunteering. I would spend time doing sports. I would spend time getting outside. So there is no wrong answer about that. It's whatever you need. So you sound like a busy person between books, teaching, running your own agency. So sleep sounds like a great project for you to take on.
Yes.
Christian, your last book was excellent. As I understand, you're writing another book. Tell us a little bit about what's coming there.
Thank you. That's interesting. 5 years ago, I moved to the countryside from the city, and I moved with my own office, with my business, to the countryside. And I wondered if it is good or not to work from the countryside and not from the city again anymore. And I'm writing about it, how it is to move in a very, very tiny village, and how the people are different, how the people are the same. What does it change for me, for my work, for my business? And it's very funny. It's 5 years experience from now, and I can recommend it. It's a very good step.
Excellent. Christian, it's been fascinating speaking with you today. So again, I'll just thank you for your time, sharing your wisdom, walking us through the exercise, and everything that you're doing to help the creative teams out there in the world. With that, I'll say thank you, everyone, for joining in today. Please continue to follow Extensis at extensis.com and via all the usual social media channels. Christian, thank you again, and have a great day.
Thank you. It was my pleasure.
Cheers.